on Saturday, March the 10th, the Candidates Tournament begins in Berlin. 8 players battling it out to see who will challenge the world champion Magnus Carlsen in November. It will be a fantastic event. You might remember 2 years ago in 2016 how exciting that one turned out to be. It went right to the wire, right to the final round, and I have no doubt that this tournament again will be fantastically tense. So I'd like to introduce the players to you and give you a quick preview what you might expect from the tournament. First of all, let me tell you who's playing, the 8 players and how they got there. So we have Sergey Karjakin, who qualifies just because he was the challenger in the last World Championship match. We have the top 2 finishers from the World Cup, that's Levon Aronian and Ding Liren. We have the top 2 finishers from the FIDE Grand Prix Series 2017, and that's Shahriar Mamedyarov and Alexander Grischuk. The top 2 players with the highest average 2017 rating, that's Wesley So and Fabiano Caruana. And the wildcard nomination from the organisers, Aegon, and they picked Vladimir Kramnik. That was quite controversial. Many players expected it to be Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, who'd had a tremendous year, but in the end they went with the Russian. So in this first video I'd like to introduce 3 of the players, and let's go in ranking order from the bottom up. So we're going to start with Sergey Karjakin. He's 28 years old. He's currently number 13 on the live list. He hasn't had a great time since the World Championship match against Carlsen. 2017 was not a brilliant year. But he has nerves of steel. He's fantastically well prepared. He has the kind of solid style that is actually ideally suited to this tournament. Remember, it's 8 players, double round, all play all. Generally, in these kind of tournaments, one player doesn't forge ahead. You've got to play very solidly. Suits Karjakin's style. He often makes a lot of draws and just nicks the odd win. And, well, in the Tata Steel tournament at the beginning of the year, he scored 7.5 out of 13, so he was very satisfied with that. So maybe he's working himself into a bit of form. So although on ranking he's at the bottom of the list, I wouldn't write him off actually. Let me show you a game that's typical of his style. Now this was played in a Romanian rapid tournament, the Medias Kings rapid tournament in November 2017. He was white against Wei Yi. I think it shows his style very well. So white is slightly better. He has a nice bishop against the knight. This knight, if this knight could move away and maybe block the c5 with c6, I think black would be fine. But the problem is that c-pawn is under fire, and so white can start a nice initiative on the queen side. So this is classic play really. Again, making sure this knight can't move. There are too many pieces directed against the pawn. And now what do you do? Well, we would quite like to break with b5, but then after this is exchanged, then the knight can drop, defending the pawn, and then you can play c6. Black should be okay there. So Karjakin just waits. Every Russian schoolboy knows the king belongs in the middle in endgame, so we'll just put it behind this nice clump of pawns and await events. And I think black should play rook d5. I mean, black is always a bit worse here, but exchanging rooks looks logical to me. But instead, Wei Yi played rook e8, mistake, because now b5 is possible. It's difficult to defend the pawn, because if the rook comes here, then of course there's a pin, and we take that knight off. So, and if knight back, then of course that pawn is on prise. So Wei lashed out with e5. That was taken, and the bishop came back. But that doesn't actually improve matters. The knight dropped to defend the b pawn, and that can't be taken, but of course the e pawn is on prise. Now, in a rapid play game, of course, this is still not simple to win. You need excellent technique, but I tell you what, Karjakin is a player with superb technique. Now, this is really instructive. So he's got a nice clump of pawns, but difficult to advance through the middle. So what do? You just play around the sides. You use your 2 rook pawns to make a break. And this is beautiful technique. I'm going to flick through this fairly quickly. But it's just this idea to keep hold of, that he's going to use his rook pawns. So he is advancing in the centre. That's very nice. But before he goes too far, he's going to use his rook's pawns. So you can see that he's toying with the idea of opening the H file to go in with the rook, but at the moment he's blocked out by these pieces. But then he turns to the other side of the board and pushes this one. So this is fantastic strategy. And now he decides, in fact, just to plant that one at h6, because he realizes he's going to be able to make a breakthrough on the queen side using his a pawn. And here he goes, rook a1 and a6. He's made the breakthrough, and now he's targeting this pawn. Well, this pawn of course as well. But notice, he's not throwing these pawns forward yet. That would have landed him in some difficulty, but instead, here we go. He's going around the side. Of course, if the rook blocks, then a check on the 7th rank, and white, I'm sure, would break in very quickly. But now the rook comes round the back, and this one is dropping. Well, here, black resigned. If the knight goes back to f8, then bishop d6, hit the knight, and then you take here, easily winning. Beautiful technique from Karjakin. Okay, let's move on to Alexander Grischuk. So he qualified by doing very well in the FIDE Grand Prix series. So he started well in the FIDE tournaments, but he hasn't had a fantastic second half of 2017. He's played a lot of blitz and rapid tournaments, but nothing really very special as far as classical events goes. So who knows, maybe he's keeping his powder dry, but Grischuk is an explosive player. So he's 34 years old, he's number 12 on the live list. He has been much higher in the world rankings in the past, so we can't write him off. And he is a very, very dangerous attacking player. Let me show you this game that was played in the Russian Team Championship in May 2017. Well, from a Spanish position, he's built up a very nice attack on the king side, and now he makes the break. I mean, in a way, this isn't very original, but he carries it out very nicely. So we often see this kind of pawn break in the Benoni as well with white. So looking to attack down the f file, and he can also use the e4 square and also opens up the bishop's diagonal. So classic attacking chess. Exchanges, and now that pawn is just a terrible problem for black. It cuts black's position in two, and of course it sets up all kinds of mating nets. But first of all, he defends this pawn. He does this very nicely, actually. And queen here, he's coming into h6. And now, after knight takes pawn, well, watch out, that might drop, but no. We sack the exchange and go in. In fact, this wins by force. It's very, very nice. Threatening a mate. Knight e4, so he wants to play knight g5, threatening a mate and knocking out this knight, and then you get into g7, therefore rook g8. So knight number 2 comes over, ready to play knight g5 and mate on h7, so that's why black plays queen f8. But we play knight g5 anyway. Beautiful stuff, of course. If queen takes queen, knight takes pawn is checkmate. And that's really the end of that. Black exchanged and now played rook g7. Well, it's the only way to defend the mate on h7, but now after this, black resigned. If king g8, well, you just drop the queen back. White is a piece up for nothing with a winning attack to boot. Yeah, Grischuk, very, very dangerous. He has an enormous problem with time pressure. If he can solve that, then, you know, he could hit the heights. He's an enormously talented player, has an incredible flair for attack, as we've seen. But can he deliver in the big tournaments? Hasn't done so yet, but let's see. And we come on to Ding Liren from China. Now, I'm really intrigued by Ding. He is the first Chinese player to ever qualify for the candidates tournament. He's only 25 years old, number 11 on the live list. He got to the final of the World Cup this year. He had a tremendous 2017, actually. He won several tournaments. He won the FIDE Grand Prix tournament in Moscow. He won, well, a strong tournament in Danzhou in China. Well, he had excellent results. The European Club Cup got 5 out of 7. But, I mean, the World Cup was really the breakthrough event that qualified him for the candidates tournament, where he lost out in the final against Levon Aronian, but before then had beaten, well, a host of incredibly strong players, did really well. And Ding played possibly the game of the year. If you haven't seen it, you can find it on my channel. An incredible sacrificial game after the Queen's Gambit. And this game from the Department of Mallorca FIDE Grand Prix tournament also shows Ding's explosive style. He's playing black here. It's against Inakiev. Very strong Russian player. He's formerly, I think, European individual champion. But Ding really made short work of him here. From a Spanish, you can see these bishops look pretty good, but the centre is blocked. But Ding plays here g5. This is an outrageous move. He'd previously prepared it with king h8. Queen took. It's just to open up the g file, of course. Hitting the queen came to f5. And now simply rook g7. Preparing to swing across with rook number 2 and get an attack down the g file. But also there are ideas to hit the queen with bishop c8. White played knight f3. It's an incredibly dangerous position. Rook g8. Attacking g2. So if g3 defending, then the bishop drops, hitting the queen. Queen takes e5. Rook takes g3 check. Remember there's a pin here. And then rook takes f3, winning. So Inakiev had clearly pinned his hopes after rook g8 on bishop g5, blocking this out, but he must have overlooked Ding's next move. Knight takes e4. Bang! And that just explodes the position, opens the centre. It's going to open up the g file. Well, the tactics work. So first of all, what happens on bishop takes queen? Let's have a look. Then rook takes g2 check. And it's checkmate. If king f1, rook f2 mate. And if the king goes in the corner, knight f2. Okay, that's the easy variation. What about rook takes knight? Let's take a look at that one. So rook takes, and now rook takes. And the queen drops. Now we don't take the rook, but we play instead f5. Pinning and winning again. Those bishops are just monstrous. And the game continuation after knight takes, that's just happened. Inakiev played h4, protecting the bishop, but then that got taken. And now Ding sacked an exchange just to break through. And once again you can see these bishops are just deadly. The queen drops. Now black can take here straight away, but it's even stronger to throw in queen f6, attacking that pawn. And if rook f1, simply queen g6, and there's no proper defence to rook takes g2. Of course, g3 will be met by rook takes g3 and game over. So Narkiev played rook e3, just blocking that, but then Ding took the queen, took the rook, and, well, queen against rook and bishop, but with all these extra pawns, and that's an incredibly easy win. So that shows you this explosive style that Ding has, an incredibly dangerous player, really dynamic player. So it's going to be very interesting to see how he does. In the next video, I'll introduce the remaining 5 players in the tournament. Watch out for that. I just can't wait for the Candidates tournament to start. It's going to be great.